From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide, dive bombing.
If you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not going to get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know if it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
I'm James Rispoli, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. I have Rico sitting back beside me, fresh off of a trip around the world, I think, with NHRA. You're gone for a while there, buddy.
That's definitely the way it felt, yes.
And, of course, we have the track dude back behind the controls here, Michael Young, once again.
Love the Bucky shirt.
Will be part of it. Yeah, did you make a stop?
I didn't get a stop at Buc-ee's. I've had this shirt. It's a long story, and we'll share it in another episode.
Thank you for sparing us. We appreciate that. We have a great guest that's coming on the show with us this week. They call him King James Rispoli. He's part of the Vance and Hines bagger bike team, if you will, Moto America's King of the Baggers, and he and Hayden Gillum are our teammates there on that outstanding team. By the way, fresh off of Daytona where they beat the factory Harley-Davidson team. That had to be a sweet moment for him. He is a standout for sure, 2-time AMA Pro Road Racing National Champion, also a British Superbike veteran as well, a 2-time AMA Bonneville Salt Flat land speed record holder as well. A standout on the dirt, a standout on the asphalt, and we welcome you to the show, my friend.
Yo, what's going on, guys?
Very cool, man. So born in New Hampshire, migrated to Attica, New York, and then eventually ended up down there just outside of Daytona, Florida, where you live now, correct?
Yep. I'm in DeLand in sunny old Florida. Once I moved down here, I tend to stay. You know, every time I go back up north or to England or wherever it's cold, I remind myself I need to get home. I'm getting a little old and getting creaky.
So talk to us about the progression of your career and how you got going. When did you first climb on a motorcycle? When did it seem to make sense? Did you start off on bikes or did you start off in something else?
Yeah, so I was a sports guy anyways, and I played all the typical sports, soccer, basketball growing up, and hockey was one of my big ones. And then I was always into motorcycle riding. Like I started at 6 years old. I was kind of late when you think about it, when all these, prodigy kids started at like 3 years old. I was on a 50cc. Literally, I rode every 50cc you could imagine, from a JR to a Z50 to a Lem, Polini, everything, until I got onto a 65 when I was like 10 or 11. And this is all on the dirt track, amateur racing in New Hampshire. My first race is at Jolly Roger, and we decided to go to the 65s, and that's kind of when I really started getting good at dirt track. I started winning. We would go to amateur nationals, and I would win the half miles, and we ended up getting a couple championships, and then kind of progressed there. I think it's one of those things where it just snowballed for me.
What age were you then running the half-mile tracks?
Oh, yeah, so, I was 12.
Wow.
11
yeah,
on a 65.
Let's try to put it in perspective there.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think the speeds, any idea what the speeds were? I mean, I know you weren't on a full, on a big bike, but still the 65s, weight, the horsepower, I bet you guys were rolling.
Yeah, we had to have still been doing 65 to 80 mile an hour on these 65s, I would say. Yeah, it was wild, the big cushion tracks, and I look at it now and I see all these kids and they're just senders, man. Like, it's tough. I watch like even Loretta Lynn's in motocross and I see these guys on like PWs and I'm like, I wouldn't even, like, how are they getting around the track and stuff like that? So I think the younger generation is getting more sendier than we were. But yeah, I kind of can just continue there up the ranks and, 250s, 450s. And when I was 17, I ended up getting on a 600 We ended up buying a M4 Suzuki 600 and did some of the weird stuff. And that's kind of how I dipped my toe into the road race scene.
I was talking with Ben Fox. I think I mentioned to you yesterday that he's a friend of ours, is a mutual friend, and of course, such a talented engine builder. And he said he worked with you for a couple of years in the UK, correct?
Yeah, we brought him in when I was riding for TTC, which was I don't know if you guys know the band The Prodigy, Keith Flint, rest in peace, big dog. But when I rode for that team, the big Yamaha team, we brought him in as a data guy, and I'll be honest, we had a phenomenal year, and Ben and myself really got close. He taught me a lot about electronics. That guy is super savvy and super smart on the electronical side and as a crew chief, and I learned a lot from that guy. We also had some fun traveling around Europe.
So just touching on his career as we get going here on the Skinny with King James Rispoli. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
You're not buying a bike that's race ready yet, but we do think it's coming where Harley and Indian will have race ready motorcycles that you can just buy off the showroom floor.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studios here in Speedway, Indiana. This is The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. We have King James Rispoli on the show here with us. The 2020 AFT Production Twins champ, 7 wins, 4 runner-ups, and 15 starts. It was a great year for him for sure. Cut his teeth in dirt. And we're just touching on his career because he has bounced back and forth. And we were talking about Ben Fox, which is a mutual friend of ours and a very talented engine builder. And as he just mentioned, Data Act guy as well. So you guys had some success over there in the UK. But I was chatting with Ben yesterday just to try and get a little bit of knowledge. As you mentioned before, he's so keen at what he does. And I said, I didn't realize, because you and your teammate, Hayden, both came out of the flat track world into asphalt. And he said, yeah, man, he said the guys that run flat track are very comfortable with that slip angle, and you guys, the bike has to be free on the asphalt as well, so you're comfortable with backing those things into the turns and carrying a lot of speed. He said it's a very good crossover.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially when we specifically talk about the baggers, I think it's been an easy transition for both me and Hayden. And if you look at the Wyman brothers, they're both dirt trackers as well. And I think that's helped us with the transition because you've got to ride the bagger loose. You don't really see anybody riding them like Superbike wise, wheels in line. They've got to be hanging out on entry, on exit, and definitely the dirt track, the blood, sweat and tears put into that early days of my career has easily transitioned into this, and I think that's what's helped me get up to speed really, really quick.
So is that because of the bags themselves? I mean, when you take a look at the bike, obviously it does have the saddlebags on the back. They're about half the height. They don't go down as far as they would, but they do, because they're there, you can't lean those things over and drag an elbow like those guys do.
So that's a little bit of a myth. I mean, you could hang off that thing. I mean, we're getting pretty close to drag an elbow, I would say, at some tracks with some of the curbs. The bags will not touch the ground. We've raised the motorcycle up a significant amount, and that's probably the biggest step that they've made with the baggers. And it's crazy. I mean, like, those things are empty. They're full carbon fiber. They don't weigh a thing. And the entire motorcycle itself has been re-engineered and redesigned to let us go fast on them. So it's quite crazy when people are like, how do you get leaned over? Well, the thing's like 2 feet off the ground compared to your stock bagger.
Yeah, so that brings us to a great question. How are those bikes delivered to you guys, and then what do you have to do to get them race ready?
Yeah, so there's a massive development that's going on since the class's inception. I mean, when they first started out, there was nothing. You were taking, I believe Hayden was part of the first crew, and he still had floorboards on the thing, couldn't lean it over, and the lap times are 15 seconds slower than they are now. Harley Davidson.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Heel shifters, the whole nine. It was bad.
Wow.
So,
did they fold up at least so when he leaned over, the floorboard would fold up?
I don't know, but It was like canyon riding more or less. So, but just to go on it quickly, Factory Harley Davidson and the other manufacturer Indian both did a phenomenal job of building motorcycles that got more and more competitive over the last 2 years. Harley's done a phenomenal job to be able to now supply parts to the field so that there's not such a big gap. So essentially, you're not buying a bike that's race ready yet, but we do think it's coming where Harley and Indian will have race ready motorcycles that you can just buy off the showroom floor essentially and go race. But they're fully custom at the moment.
Yeah, because back in the day, like you had the Camel Pro bike, right? The Harley, they had the exhaust coming out the opposite side. I remember a buddy of mine's dad had one, right? Old flat track bike. But I was wondering about that. So, are there amateur classes that are within this class or within this type of racing at this point, or what's the deal with that, or is that coming?
Yeah, so I was just at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. We do a lot of teaching out there, and I did see an amateur class. There's a V-twin class that is now introduced at CVMA. And I think that it's going to be more and more as the bagger class gets bigger. There's got to be some sort of feeder system, but at the moment it's just a bunch of top dogs that maybe have chasing some money and moved into this class at the moment. So it's not that stacked yet, like as far as it's not bubbled out towards the full mainstream. But I will say this: when we go to the racetrack, you see more baggers and more Harley fans than any fan there is, which is kind of cool. And it's really cool to see in Moto America an entire new demographic show up.
That is wild. And I mean, if I was a kid, to steal your dad's bag or take her out there and run what you brung type of thing.
I don't know. There's something that there's
why
a
couldn't that
lure
work
to
out?
them for sure. I don't know what it is, but just because it's got bags on it, I don't know. It's just kind of cool. And then, of course, Harley Davidson came out with some really, some very, very powerful, I think it was Vance and Hines maybe that pushed that issue, but the extremely fast bagger bikes, so you could still have the comfort of a bagger bike with a fairing and be on board a rocket ship.
And that was the thing. Like, I was flipping through something or was, a reel or something online, and I saw it and I was like, hold on a minute, what are we doing here? A bagger bike, and these guys are getting it. I mean, they're hammering them. And I was instantly hooked. I mean, I thought it was really cool. It's a total different setup. So,
once again, we're going to take a quick break here. We want to pick his brain a little bit more. He said you have to ride these things a good bit different than what you would a typical super bike. So, I want to pick his brain just a bit more on that. Stay with us.
They're a little bit like wet spaghetti. You got to ride them differently. You got to ride the wiggle, as Nikki would say.
Welcome back to the Skinny. It is a beautiful day here in Speedway, Indiana, as we are talking to one of the best behind the wheel of a bagger bike. Yeah, he's part of the Vance and Hines team. James Rispoli is with us here and has joined us from his home in DeLand, Florida. We've been picking his brain a little bit about how they ride these things. And James, you mentioned that you don't really ride them like a super bike, and he said where you keep your wheels in line. So expand a little bit more on that. Tell us what you're talking about.
Yeah, so the baggers are pretty loose as it is. They're a little bit like, wet spaghetti. You got to ride them differently. You got to ride the wiggle, as Nikki would say. But it's interesting how they're getting better and better and more stiff with the more development that, say, myself knowing with the factory Harley, the development that they are bringing and the parts that they are starting to produce is making these things so incredible that we're only like 2.5 to 3 seconds off pole pace of a 600 race. Or at the Daytona 200, I think we were Kyle did a 50.6 around there, and which would have put him, I don't know, close to like 15th on the grid. So when you start putting that in perspective with the V-twin bagger, it's pretty incredible. But the way you got to ride them is you just got to ride them loose. You got to allow it to do its thing. as you can see, I don't know if you've seen the clip. Maybe we can pull it up at some point. There's the clip of race 1 where getting out of shape onto the banking and the thing just hucked me for like 8 seconds. So
I was going to ask you first. I didn't know if it was you or if it was Hayden, but I saw you coming out of the bus stop, coming up in the NASCAR 3, and man, I mean, talk about a tank slapper. Listen, there's no mortal human that can hang on to that. Hats off to somebody of your talent, because I was like, oh my God, how did he hang on to that? And then it happened a little bit later on in the race. I don't know if it was you or Hayden again, but I want to say in turn 2, 3, that little dog leg right there, it also did it.
Yeah, so I mean, I was the first one with the big one. Hayden, he's a little bit bigger than I am, and he's got that Kentucky strength and was able to muscle his a little bit better out of 2. But
embrace the wiggle, as he says.
Mine,
no thanks.
Mine definitely was gnarly. I don't know how I saved it, but you've got to allow it to do its thing. And to be honest, that was more unexpected, because they do it almost out of every corner, especially with the shifts and stuff like that. They just wiggle a lot. So you just have to kind of let it do its thing. But it's a different motorcycle to ride. You know, Jake Lewis is now a guy coming back from Superbike last year, and he was like, man, how the heck do you guys ride these things? And honestly, I've said since day one, man, the limit is so, you can ride so far over the limit that it's almost, you have to ride over the limit to get it to where it needs to be able to feel like good on the bike. But it's a unique motorcycle, and I think it's something that some of the riders that, you know, you've got to be a little bit niche to do it.
So in motorcycle drag racing, obviously they have a lot of dampening going on in the steering area. Is that something that could you guys stance? I mean, listen, who am I? I'm just asking a question, I guess. You know, why would you not incorporate some more dampening in the steering to try to keep that to a low roar? What's the hindering part of that?
The funny thing is, we had a steering dampener on it, but we put new clamps on it and they don't quite fit. So that was the first race without the steering dampener on it. So yeah, it was quite funny. But yeah, you normally we run steering dampeners and they're pretty difficult, but their bikes are so stable as it is. I know it's a contradiction of what I'm saying, but they are stable. They're just wiggly. They're rubber mounted. Swing arms are rubber mounted, and so you've got a lot of flex on a lot of things, and you've got this engine that is like literally doing this on gas and brakes. So it's kind of crazy the way that, you know, they're being ridden, to be honest, with the amount of movement that's going on.
So that bike originally is what? What is that bike from the factory, if you will?
Like the weight?
No, is it a street glide? Is it
it's road glide. Yeah,
road glide.
They tested the street glide, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to sound like, but the fairing moves with the steering handlebar, and the road glide, it's fixed. So that, and to be honest, with the steering head, I rode one with it like this, and it's impossible to ride. There's too much weight moving around.
That's kind of wild, because I have a street glide, and the street glide, I love it because the fairing does move, right? And then the road glide, it doesn't move, and it's a total different ride. It really is, and it's nothing compared to the ride of what he's talking about. I can only imagine hauling it into the turn and the fairing moving and changing the air and everything.
Exactly.
else.
I can't imagine going through Daytona turns 3 and 4 at whatever speed you guys are going, and and having that thing move just a little bit and deflecting air in a different direction. That would be crazy. Trying to make a pass, I mean, that would be wild.
Impossible. Like it would have ripped the front end off that thing if I got into that tank slapper with a street glide. There would have been zero way.
It would have been sponsor, no sponsor. Sponsor, no sponsor.
I don't know if the Hulk himself could have hold that thing. So I mean, it was definitely the best move to get off the street glide just for performance purposes. But talking about the banking, it's quite crazy. I mean, these bikes weigh 630 pounds, and when you get into a draft behind them, I mean, you do get a bit of a wiggle on the bank because you're just so there's so much weight through it, and there's so much power. I mean, we did 174, 75 mile an hour on the banking. I mean, You know, like it's crazy.
It is not a game for the meek, that is for sure. We'll take a quick break right here. We're learning about bagger bike racing. Stay with us. We have plenty of questions.
Pretty much like drafting a semi truck. It's quite it's quite big. It's especially going around the banking. There's a lot of wind noise, a lot of movement in your head.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studio. Ken Stout, Rico Elmore, and Michael Young here in the studio from DeLand, Florida is King James Rispoli. Having a great time with him. We're learning a lot about what it takes to be a successful bagger bike racer. If you're not familiar with it, make sure you Google it. Look it up, Moto America's King of the Baggers series. It is a ton of fun to watch. Extremely talented riders, and we were chatting a little bit about how far they can lean these things over. The fact that they have bags on the back of them is one thing, but they have a fairing on the front of them as well. And you mentioned something in your last statement there, James, about the draft. It was certainly one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, because these things have to be punching a big hole in the air compared to, say, a super bike. And then if you guys get side by side together, you're punching a massive hole in the air. So the guy that's third place, if he's behind two people that are side by side, must have a massive run. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much like drafting a semi truck. It's quite it's quite big. It's especially going around the banking. There's a lot of wind noise, a lot of movement in their head and stuff like that. But I will say this, you know, them being that big and having the big fairing on them, it's pretty quiet once you get behind it. You know, in your helmet area, it's pretty quiet. It's not too bad, but you can feel like when the wind starts touching different spots of your back and things of that nature, because there is so much wind going over the top, but you can get behind the bubble pretty good. It is gnarly. Daytona's gnarly, but you know, it's something that I think is pretty cool.
So something that we did a lot, my son and I, we ran Mazda MX-5 Cups. And those are race cars and very, very competitive series, 20-plus cars on a regular basis. Not the fastest cars on the planet, but very, very talented drivers. But they have open roofs. It was an open roof race series. And he could tell when he was getting in the draft and when he wasn't. So he would start hearing the wind buffer a little bit as he got closer and closer to the person in front of him, and pretty soon knew, like, okay, here we go. I'm in the draft now. Do you get those sensations?
Oh, definitely. And especially at Daytona, the draft goes so far back. I mean, you were talking about if there's a double draft, like there was times where me and Hayden were side by side. We were on the same motorcycle. If you don't get quite the run from behind to be able to go by, you can get stuck, and then you're just stuck like this. And now you've created like that semi effect. And the guy, 30, 40 feet behind you is starting to sniff that, and you know it could be game over by the time you come to the stripe. So you've got to make sure that you give them enough room so when you go up on top of the banking and you're running up top, that you can either get a pass done before you get to the turns 4, or you've got to be able to slingshot when you get back straight up and down to go by. So yeah, definitely unique. You can feel it the whole time, and the smart people know where to draft from and which side the wind's coming from.
So when you bring that up, obviously, I mean, it lays right into car racing. So what those guys learned very quickly, and then certainly you see it in NASCAR on a weekly basis, is when you pull up beside somebody and you're trying to make that pass, and then you hit the wall, if you will, all of a sudden you got their air blowing on your bike. So you were able to take advantage of their draft, their slipstream, until you got even with them. Then you hit the wall, and then they would immediately pull either right or left to try and get clear of that extra air coming off of them. Do you guys do that at all? Do you try to get away from that side draft whenever you get up even with them?
Yeah, so I mean, for myself, I'm hoping somebody comes by me and that I can get straight back in his draft and start to get the tug again. I personally, when I roll by, I'm as close as possible to the person trying to if it would be to try to, I know you're going to hit that wall, but if you can still be closer, you can at least try to sniff it as long as possible until you make that, you know, around the motorcycle. I think it's a little different in the car because it's wider, so you've got that buffer being a lot thicker and wider coming off the car, whereas the bike's a lot thinner, and you can maneuver it a little bit more. And I mean, the ultimate goal is if you have 1 or 2 bikes in front of you, and you can then draft and then get back in the next guy's draft, so you can keep getting tugged along.
A lot of fun, no question about it. Hey, we talked to him about accelerating these things, draft, how to hang on to them. We haven't talked about braking at all. We're going to touch on that when we come back.
I used to be the big weight weenie and weigh my food, weigh myself every morning, every night, after every ride. And I was cycling 3 to 5 hours a day, and it was 152 pounds and 6% body fat, but it's just not sustainable. And
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to The Skinny. We have James Rispoli on the show with us here this week. Of course, part of the Vance and Hines bagger team. We've been picking his brain about these things. Man, they are so intriguing for sure. And we're just going to continue down the road. I had a whole bunch of questions to ask you in other directions, but man, these bikes are so cool to talk about. So we've talked about how they accelerate, plenty of power, top speed there at Daytona, in excess of 175 miles an hour. The fact that they blow a big hole in the air, courtesy of the design of the bike. But we haven't talked about braking these things. And when you see the guys on the super bikes, I mean, they come in hard on the brakes, picking up the back tires sometimes. And you guys have a little bit different way of going about it. But still, I would think plenty of weight transfer. Can you be as aggressive as they are on the brakes?
yeah, so the one thing is that the braking stability on the bike is actually really good. Last year it was even better. We had a little different setup with the motorcycle, and the stability under braking was actually incredible. That was like our best quality of the motorcycle as our chassis, because I rode for Vance and Hines last year as well. Now we've got these new clamps, and that's gone away a little bit, but they're super stable in that regard. Lifting the rear end up, doing a stoppie going into the corner is probably not going to happen. We see a couple people crash because there's just too much weight for the front tire. We have to realize that the tires were developed for super bikes, not for baggers. And when you start essentially doubling the weight behind the tires, I think it's astonishing of what the tire is capable of doing with that amount of weight. But yeah, the braking stability on the motorcycle is phenomenal. I would argue that we could probably, if we were able to go to the same speed, probably we could go as deep as a super bike. But as soon as you start that tip in, they're going to start turning left, and we're going to continue going straight.
Talk to us about your physical conditioning, because you can't just go out there and do it as a chubby guy.
Yeah, I mean, the baggers, because the races are a little bit shorter, you can get away with a little bit less physical. Like if you're racing superbike, against Gagne or against Bobier or against, in the Superstar class against Alexander, those types of guys, I mean, you've got, 22, 23 laps where you've got to, be a tenth a lap, or you're going to lose the race, you know what I mean? So in 100-degree weather. So, I mean, you've got to be, the thing is I came from that world. So for myself, I just stayed in the same physical shape. And now with myself, Kyle, Travis, my teammate Hayden, I mean, the class is stacked this year. So I think everybody's in pretty good physical shape. For myself, it's cycling a lot. I do a lot of bicycle riding on the road, mountain biking. This year, I've incorporated a ton more actual motorcycle riding with like moto, dirt track racing, some of my past there, and just staying physically fit. I'm traveling to Cali during the winter about 2 times a month to teach. I do teaching with Jason Pridmore and his 43 training program, and just keeping fun. I think I've, over the years, I've lost a ton of weight trying to do it and trying to be super skinny. And now I'm in a pretty healthy balance where I do the training that I need to do to stay physically fit and to be mentally ready. Because I think everybody's pretty physically fit for riding a motorcycle. It's more about the mental side, who's got it to do it on the last couple laps. So for me, it's wake up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, grab a quick pull from the espresso machine, getting on the bicycle for a couple hours, and then, probably chilling out, I'm in a real estate business, so trying to do some of the real estate stuff, and then probably back at the gym or do some sort of moto or some sort of motorcycle riding Tuesdays, Thursdays, and on the weekends. And then, yeah, I mean, it's really just kind of that and keeping the diet strict as we get closer to the races and letting loose a little bit after. So,
Yeah, we've had a couple of guys in here, that run the superbike stuff, and man, they're like Greek gods. I mean, they're cut and they're in.
Reminds me a
phenomenal
lot
shape.
of us.
Yeah, you take a look at us,
Yep,
and then
yep.
absolutely nothing
Very
like that.
similar. Very similar, not at all.
yeah.
That's the name of the
I
show.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I used to be the big weight weenie and weigh my food, weigh myself every morning, every night, after every ride, and I was cycling 3 to 5 hours a day, and it was 152 pounds and 6% body fat, but it's just not sustainable, and I was pretty aggro, and I think my girlfriend would hate me at that time, so we put a little bit of weight on so we can be we can be a fun James.
Full commitment, though. I mean, at the end of the day, and to get that phone call, what was that like, by the way, to get that phone call from Vance and Hines?
Yeah, it was a super unique thing. Actually, last year was really unique because I called Terry and was looking to try to ride the baggers, and originally he was like, "We don't have a seat," and then Hayden ended up doing his superbike deal, so I stole Hayden's spot, and I think Hayden got FOMO once he saw us being so competitive on the bike, and he decided to come back this year. So, but yeah, it's always good working with TV. I mean, I think he's been in the sport for so long, especially drag racing, and Vance and Hines as a brand has been around for so long. They're kind of the industry leaders for building stuff fast and for their engines and performance parts, and they've been in the Harley game for so freaking long. It's like it was just probably a dream come true for us to kind of come together, and to be leading the championship is huge for us, and for a privateer team to be leading the championship is huge for Harley as well. It should help more teams come in.
Want to get the skinny on other guests in different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny.
Welcome back to Speedway, Indiana, the Fatheads Eyewear Studio. We have James Rispoli on the show here this week. It's called The Skinny, and we're getting the skinny on the bagger bike racers. He's an incredible rider, and of course, with one of the most famous teams, I would say, in all of motorsports. You'd be hard-pressed to pay attention to any sort of racing and not be familiar with the name Vance and Hines. James, we were talking about Andrew Hines, or you were talking about Terry Vance, of course, of Vance and Hines. But Andrew is very involved in this, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody back at the shop is very involved. Obviously, they've got to work on their drag program to make sure that they can win that. But I think when it comes down to it, building parts and engine components and things of that nature and finding horsepower, I think it's a group effort. Obviously, we got our main guy, Steve, over there, and Byron himself are on the drawing board the whole time. So it's a big group effort. I believe they keep to themselves, and I do my training, and they build the bikes, and we show up, and we hopefully have some good surprises. But the entire team is really kind of gelled and come together, and I think it's kind of cool. In 2020, I won a championship with Vance and Hines, essentially built Harley Davidson XG 750, and then they won their championship last year with Jesse Janis. So it kind of fits the mold that we go and we're leading the championship and that we can fight for one. So it kind of fits the Vance and Hines build.
So you mentioned Steve. I'm guessing you're referring to Steve Polk, who is the crew chief for the team. Craig Kuntz, by the way, we have to thank him for helping us get you on the show. But Steve Polk also came over from the American Flat Track Association, so a lot of that knowledge that he carries from flat track has migrated over here. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we can use some of the stuff from dirt track into road racing. It's kind of hard to go the other way except for electronics, but we've got a great group of people. Steve is pretty knowledgeable in his stuff. Craig, team manager, Ricky, Josh, Roy is a truck driver, Gene helping with chassis and stuff like that. So we've got such a good group of people this year, and it's really good that we were able to take the dirt track team and bring it into the road racing side as well to give us that bit of knowledge and to give us I guess a bump of confidence, coming off a championship. And these guys don't want to lose, man. I mean, they're working their butts off in the shop every day as I am training so that we can show up and win. And I know that the investment's being made this year, so it'd be a disservice if I was out, drinking all the time and not putting a serious effort together. So hopefully we can kind of keep it going and keep the Vance and Hines guys towards the front.
Yeah, what other things? They run everything out of Brownsburg, right? I think we talked about that.
Yeah, they've got an immaculate shop out of there. I think all the race department stuff is done out of Brownsburg, or is it Brownsburg or Brownsville? What is it?
Yeah, Brownsburg. Yep.
Yeah. So I think everything gets done out of there.
So they've got their drag bike program. They've got the bagger bike deal. You said, are they running dirt out of there too? Is that what?
I don't think they're running dirt track, flat track stuff this year, are they?
Unfortunately, I think they've pulled out of the dirt tracks scene right now. I think the bagger thing being so direct to consumer for Harley Davidson's really just kind of pushed the pipe, and especially for Vance and Hines. I mean, this is exactly what they cater to, is the performance bagger, and I think this industry is just popping off. The lid is just kind of fired off, and everyone's getting involved, and there's a lot of money being thrown around from the customer side. So for Vance and Hines to just literally speak to their key demographic, I think is, why they've made that tough decision to only focus on the bagger racing.
So what is your everyday ride?
On the bicycle, do you mean?
No, on motorcycle wise.
Oh, so it's kind of funny, man. I'm still waiting for my my bagger to show up. It must have got lost in the mail or something. I don't know.
Logistics are terrible these days.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting ready to say, man. I mean, surely you got to have something wicked, you just rip around on a little bit here and there.
Yeah. Hopefully I win a championship and I can steal one of those custom ones that Kyle and Travis have. But I know Harley's got a bagger coming for me. They want me to be on one. And I mean, to be honest, I rode one at Daytona in 2020. I rode to the track and back when I won my championship. And I was like blown away at how nimble and stuff the Harleys were for being how big they are. And I mean, that's really the first time that I've really ridden a road glide. And I was like, dude, these things are awesome. So I'm stoked for it to show up and we can go get dinner and stuff like that and maybe organize some key events.
Great stuff. We have James Rispoli on the show here with us this week. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
I don't know about that. You have to kind of drag it out of him. I don't kiss and tell. So we'll see.
We'll make something up and we'll blame it on you.
Yeah. So this is what he said.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Ken Stout, Rico, Elmore, and Michael Young here in the studio. We have James Rispoli down there in DeLand, Florida, who has joined us here, part of the Vance and Hines bagger team. Boy, we have learned a lot here courtesy of this young, talented rider. I want to step back to 2022 because you signed with a pretty cool dude to go racing with Wally Brown Racing, who's worked with Kenny Schrader, Penske, Roush, I believe currently competition director for Joe Gibbs. And of course, you're running some flat track with him, but what were you able to learn by being around a guy that is so seasoned in the business?
Yeah, Wally Brown is a unique character. He's got a lot of knowledge, and I remember the first time going up to JGR to meet him, I was really blown away. I didn't realize how massive the operation is, and just dealing with the people he knows, especially with a lot of the key guys under the team, and developing the motorcycle we rode last year, the KTM 890, and taking all the knowledge that I've learned with the electronics from Ben and stuff like that into there, and having his influence and his people from the car world come in was astonishing. I mean, it was kind of crazy when you think about it. Dirt track is an old school thing, and they took a lot of new school car guys and technology and implemented into the KTM 890, and it kind of just worked. I mean, it was wild for us to go out and win our first race at Kentucky Mile on a bike that's never seen the dirt. So, yeah, working with him was pretty crazy, and the entire team was like a family. And to this day, I still wish them the best luck, and I try to be involved as much as I can be without, stepping over the boundaries.
You know, you as a person to be around, say like a Ben Fox when you're in the UK, to come back, be around Vance and Hines, to be around somebody like Wally Brown, and you soak it all in as a sponge. Are you able to bring some of that knowledge? I know they have specialty positions. Those guys come in. A lot of times as a driver, you just look at them and you just say, man, I don't know what they're doing to that thing, but they are incredibly good at what they do. I'm going to get on and be incredibly good at what I do. So you don't necessarily know what they're doing, but are you able to soak up some of that knowledge and bring it forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think the original learning electronics and the way the Motec system and stuff like that works from Ben Fox has really been the basics and the fundamentals for me to take it into all the other series. And ever since I came back from Europe, dirt track has moved in a way where it's gotten probably the closest it's ever been to road racing as far as electronically. So for me to have that knowledge really helped me step the game up in that side of things, and then to work with seasoned guys like Michael that worked for Wally Brown was incredible. You know, he's super smart. Yeah, there's a lot of things I don't understand, but I know enough to be able to describe what I need for him in sort of somewhat the same language that he needs to hear so that he can make the best adjustments. And the same with Steve Polk over on the bagger thing, to see these baggers now start to get into more of an electronic place. We're taking information that I've learned from Europe, from Wally, from, all these places.
So let's talk about your sponsors. We know that you've got Mission Foods. Can you tell us about a little bit about who you've got there and what you got going on with them as well?
Yeah, so, before the show, we were talking about Mission Foods and how influential they've become in the motorcycle racing period. I mean, leaders in their industry, and to spend the amount of money that they're spending into motorcycling. I think Juan Gonzalez has got a love for motorcycling, and I think it's super cool. And I think you said that they're dipping their toe into four wheels as well. So I think it won't be long. But to have a sponsor not just throw money in as a logo and this, that, and the other, to the activation that they've created in dirt track, they've got their entire hospitality, and they outfit it with Mission Foods and things of that nature. And I think it's super cool for a company to really spend the marketing dollars and to have all the stands and the tents and all the food displays, and to have, at the one race we had fresh tacos with all of their ingredients and all of their tortillas and things of that nature, and to be so diverse in that. So it's super cool, and to be a part of a brand that's that influential, and to really come out from outside the industry and really not have that big of a tie to racing is, I think, the really the biggest thing.
Yeah, great stuff, man. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man. Such fresh information. Well, you're the first bagger bike guy we've had on the show. I want to venture to say maybe the first moto guy we've had on the show. Road race moto guy. So yeah, it's been very enlightening. The sport is unbelievably cool, and we talk about it all the time, watching you guys hang them out the way you do. I mean, backing those things in, and then to watch you in the rain, it's just absolutely like no other. So super cool. Thanks for what you guys do, man. Very, very entertaining. Best of luck moving forward, and of course to that entire Vance and Hines team. Thanks a lot for coming on, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on, and it's been really awesome to talk with you guys and to explain the discipline a little bit more. Thanks for giving me a voice too, and hopefully we have the championship by the end of the year, and we can come back on and celebrate with you guys.
Certainly off to a great start. Hey, one last quick question. Any dirt we should know about on your teammate Hayden?
I don't know about that. You'll have to kind of drag it out of him. I don't kiss and tell, so we'll see.
We'll make something up and we'll blame it on you.
Yeah. So this is what he said.
And now you know the skinny on King James Rispoli. We'll see you next week.